Mildred Ndesa, who is unfortunately not feeling very well this morning. She woke up with a flu, a cough, and her voice is disappearing. So we will not be able to hear her adequately, but we are blessed to have a very able-bodied substitute, Miss Rachel Ombaki, who is going to step in very well in the shoes of Mildred Ngesa. And so our session will flow normally the way it was expected to go. And thank you, Rachel, for supporting in that process. And to get us started, we will do a quick round as we wait for our keynote speaker, just a quick round of introductions of our panelists who are in the house. And I would like to hand over that to Rachel to start us through with just a quick round of very, very brief introductions. We won't have a lot of time as I monitor the arrival of our keynote speaker. So over to you, Rachel. Take it from there. I will alert you once the speaker is around. Thank you.
Yeah, please do. And I just want to thank you as well to the participants who are already here. Thank you for being intentional about what you want to spend your time today doing. We know that we are all busy, but for us to make an impact in leadership policies, in the number of women who make it to leadership positions, and in our participation in development of policies, I think it is important that we have such a conversation and we keep on driving the agenda of inclusion of women in politics. So I'd like to kick off by asking Esther Achieng to take just about a minute to introduce herself, tell us what she does and what she's passionate about. Esther, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Esther Okech. I work with Kenya Female Advisory Organization, Kefiado, and our work focuses on engaging through an African feminist approach on the social, economic, and political spaces within the Western Kenya region. And that includes the issues of participation. And apart from just participation, looking at how gendered budgets are able to facilitate these particular processes for women and girls to engage holistically. So part of it is to always have a space where when we are speaking, we have an intergenerational space and an intersectional space for organizing so that whatever it is that we are doing, we leave no one behind. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Esther, for sharing with us the important work that you do. Next, we'll move on to Jane Nyango from Polycom. If you can hear me, please go ahead. And if you don't mind, please, we'd also like to see your face, see the person behind the name. So Jane Nyango, please, the floor is yours. Jane, can you hear me? She says her network has a bit of issues. So that's fine, no problem. I hope you'll be able to answer the questions when we get to you. And in case you're not able to, also feel free to just type and I'll read it out from the chat, so no problem at all. We now move on to Mercy Jalimo from Crew. Are you in the room and are you able to speak?
Yes, I am in the room. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, your connection is excellent. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rachel. And I hope Mildred is doing well. Good to see you, Mildred, as well. I can see she's joined us. My name is Mercy Jelimo, and I work with the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, a national feminist non-governmental organization. And our work focuses on 4 areas. 1, on ending violence against women. 2, on increasing women's political participation. Thirdly, on sexual and reproductive health and rights issues. And then 4thly, on economic empowerment. Our goal really is to see that women and girls enjoy their rights and they live up to their full potential. We are also, the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness is also the focal point for the Deliver for Good campaign, a campaign convened by Women Deliver that works on the Sustainable Development Goals. And we also focus on the 4 areas that I've mentioned: on economic empowerment, SRHR, and political participation, and ending GBV. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for keeping it short and sweet. Next, we have Ruthie Kimani from Knowledge Hub. Ruthie, can you hear me? If you're able to put on your camera, thank you. Please go right ahead.
Awesome, awesome. My name is Ruth Kimani, or Ruthie Kimani, and I am the founder and creative director of Room and Craft. It's a fashion brand that is not only focused on making garments for women, but also men, but we majorly deal with women's clothes. Also a Gender Knowledge Hub member and a People Strategy Consultant at Rensil Integral, where we look at millennials and Gen Zs and how they are adapting to the workplaces. We work with organizations to ensure that the young generation to ensure that nexus between the 2 different generations, the baby boomers, as well as the millennials and Gen Zs in the workplace, and ensure and enhance workplace performance. And I am excited to be part of this conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And I love that you've talked about fashion, very important. Most of us, if you've met Mildred Ngesa, you know how she dresses. She dresses like, you know, the real Pan-Africanist woman, yeah? And I love that we support women who are in that industry. Next up, we have Raaya Alakarim. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly. Are you in the room? I see you're in the room. If you're able to show us your face, please do. Thank you so much. Please go ahead. Please introduce yourself and tell us the work that you engage in.
Hello.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
No, I can't.
I'm assuming because you said no, I can't was an answer to my question. Can you hear me now? Are you able to hear now? Maybe it's better if you have your camera off. Can you hear us now?
I can't hear, and I've forgotten to carry my earphones.
Oh, no problem. Please feel free to type in the chat in case you face a challenge. But before that, you can also try to log out and then log in again. Maybe it can help you.
Okay, let me try logging out.
No problem. Thank you so much. Next, we have, I think we are done. Excellent. Thank you so much for the panel for introducing themselves. Helen, I don't know if our keynote speaker is here with us now.
Yes, she's here, and I'll invite Florence. Florence, please introduce to us Honorable Fatma.
Good afternoon. It's still morning. Good morning. It's a great pleasure that you could all make it today. And so this is just to welcome Madam Fatma, Honorable Fatma Tafik. Most welcome. She's a member of parliament from Tanzania, and she'll be able to also just give us a bit more background about herself and maybe the good work that she's been doing in Tanzania, but also why it's important, the issues of women in politics and how Tanzania has been faring. And so it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Madam Fatma. And so we look forward to hearing from you. And also we'll also at some point, hopefully we'll be having a guest from Kenya. It will be a surprise, but once maybe she logs in, I'll be also able to come back and introduce her. So karibu sana, Madam Fatma. Feel at home, and we look forward to your experiences and to your rich background in terms of how Tanzania, especially going, also importance of having more women in politics. Yeah. So karibu sana, Madam Fatma. It's good to see you.
Hello.
Tunakusikia.
Hello, Florence. Hello, everyone.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. This is Fatima Taufik. I'm a member of parliament from Tanzania. I'm representing Special Seat. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for inviting me to attend this very fruitful meeting. Unfortunately, there was a problem with the network, but I think everything will be fine. We have a problem with the electricity here. It goes on and off. So I believe we are there. I'm a member of parliament from Tanzania, and I'm representing women. I'm also an human rights activist. Also, I'm the chairperson of the Tanzania Parliamentary Standing Committee on HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, non-communicable diseases, and drugs. As Florence introduced me, I've been working on the issue of women. I'm also a politician, and for quite a long time. And now this is my second term. I was the member of parliament. My first term was in 2015, and then I contested again in 2020, and fortunately I won. Before that, my profession is a teacher, but also I was a district commissioner, I was education officer, and gone through different parts of lives. And here I am now, I'm a politician. I'm very, very impressed to be here. And I believe that we'll share some of the issues. And if you allow me, there are some of the few issues I can share you through the screen. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Medica, she needs to share her screen.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
The screen is opening. I think it takes time. A minute, please. Okay, as Florence told me, I have some few information to tell you that Tanzania is making efforts to promote women leadership. For example, since independence in 1961, no woman occupied a top-level leadership position here in Tanzania. But we had few prominent women leaders holding powerful international and regional posts. And just to mention a few, we have retired Ambassador Gertrude Mongela, Her Excellency Dr. Asha Rose Migiro, who held the position of Deputy Secretary of the UN, Honorable Anna Tibaijuka, Head of UN Habitat, retired Ambassador Amina Salum Ali, the permanent representative on the UN. We had also women ministers, deputy ministers, RCs, DCs, members of parliament, councillors, and others who are serving different national posts and managerial posts. To go on, due to the questions which Apila sent to me on the lessons which I learned from the last elections, that in spite of the mentioned women in different posts, international, regional, political posts, specialized careers, nominated posts, yet the number of women are not equal in representation from a human rights perspective. The number still remains small. All in all, Tanzania has made significant improvement. In 2015, for the first time in the history of Tanzania, first women ever Honorable Samia Suluhu Hassan became the first vice president in Tanzania. To us, the Tanzanian women were very, very, very much privileged. But I've also shown some of the information, I've shown some of the numbers on how the trend of the women parliament in Tanzania since 1985 to 2020. It shows there the trend. I think you can see the numbers. But why have I shown this trend? I've shown this trend because we can see that the number in times that it goes high and the number it goes down. So still has to be done in order to enable women to have to be in different posts, especially being members of parliament, councillors, etc., etc. As you see in my slide, that in Tanzania mainland, women account for 36.8% of members of parliament. It is seen there. But the issue is most of the women parliamentarians are from special seats, and 9.8 are elected from the constituencies. So you see that much has to be done in order to enable more women to vie for constituencies. But also, women also account 6.5% of elected councillors. We have councillors and you see the numbers there, but most of the councillors, you see that they are special seats. Very few who are councillors from the wards. Also, we have a long way to go. We see that out of 185 councils, we have only 5 women councillors. This is also something that we have to debate on. On the issue of mayors, we have only 1 female mayor, and you see all those numbers there, that 90% of the candidates in the 2020 elections were men, only 10% were women. And as I said, that on the issue of special seats, there are some kind of discriminations, but we still have a very long way to go to have women in the constituencies. You can see also the number of village chairs is 2.1%. We have street chairs, we have 12.6%. You have the suburbs, we have 6.7%. Because the trend is still lagging, the ruling party, our ruling party, by then Chama cha Mapinduzi, introduced affirmative action to provide special seats for women in political parties. And that's why you see that we have at least more representation in women because of these special seats. But otherwise, on the issue of constituencies, we still have a very long way to go. Much has been done. We have the political will, but there are some barriers for women in political environment and leadership. And this is due to the cultural norms and beliefs, which also still hinder women to participate in political participation leadership. So we have to break down these cultural barriers and beliefs. Some lessons which I learned in the elections is that during the 2020 elections, more women claimed their space contesting in their own constituencies. They tried, but they couldn't manage. And there are so many factors why women cannot be able to vie, cannot be able to get seats in the constituencies because most men are powerful. And there are some more issues. But through empowerment and training, women increase their public speaking skills and campaign skills. These are the learned during the former elections. Also, there is the problem of violence against women in politics. For example, women are the perpetrators. Women are the ones who give bad languages to their fellow women. So this discourages women. So many women shy up and they do not contest. Other lesson learned is that some women couldn't participate voting or aspiring in different posts or in campaigns due to the COVID-19, as you know that this has been a problem in all worldwide. So also in our country, it was also a problem. In my recommendation that I recommend civic education and women participation in politics should be an agenda to enable more women to be involved, because there have been programs done by UN Women and other NGOs. This has shown that the women, some of the women who had undergone through these programs could be able and could vie for the posts, and some of them, they became councillors, some of them became members of parliament. So I would also say that it would be if it could be possible, more capacity building for women, it could enable more women to be involved in politics. But another question was what facilitated women to be elected and appointed into leadership position? In my view, in our country, we have democracy. We have the genuine democracy, so through democracy, and women can vie. Also, the issue of good governance. We have the political will still that our political party allows women to vie for different posts. Another issue was the self-confidence, that if a woman is self-confident, she can go and vie for a post, and with luck, she can win. And of course, she has to be at least economic sound. But also the issue of self-esteem. Some of the women, through networking and building relationship, learning from each other, also facilitated some of the women to be elected or to be appointed in leadership position. Another issue is sharing experience and knowledge skills. We know that there are some of the women who have been leaders. So by sharing experience and knowledge skills from them, it could be another way to enable women to be elected or appointed. The conducive environment, assertiveness, also style of communication, that the way the woman is communicating to the vote, to the people who are voting for him or her, for her, also it could be another thing which facilitated to be elected, the level of education, and also the mentorship programs for females and women aspirants. We have programs, for example, in our parliament, we have the programs for mentor and mentorship, especially for women who are coming from special seats. They are being mentored by the women who are coming from the constituencies. So this enabled some of the women who were in the special seats to vie for constituencies, and some of them won. Also, another thing which facilitated women to be elected was the own determination, support from the family and partners, because we see that in some situations, there are some women who are not being supported by their families, or they're not being supported by their partners, but also in some situations, the community itself. So I would say that the support from the family, partners, and communities also is one of the factors which facilitated women to be elected. The other issue is ambition, and also hard work and performance, because hard work and performance, people see how a woman performs. So when the people see, it means that it's easy for a woman to be elected. Another issue is the skills and the interpersonal skills. I continue. There was also a question, what has worked well for women in Tanzania? What I would say is that Tanzania gets a first woman as the president, Her Excellency Honorable Samia Suluhu Hassan. Even though that the participation of women in politics in Tanzania has been steadily advancing because of the presence of the number of women parliamentarians and also the voices of gender equality have gone stronger. Also, we have women councillors, also a very huge of achievement, and even women having different managerial posts is a step. Above all, Tanzanian gets a woman president. This is an opportunity for Tanzanian women, African women, and the rest of the world. Though she came into power following the death of the former president, late Honorable Magufuli, but she has shown capability, stability, peacemaker, and abled women leader. And we as Tanzanians, all, both men, women, youths, and all groups, we really acknowledge her work. And this is the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Samia Suluhu Hassan, whom we women of Tanzania are really saying that to us, it's a blessing from the God. And I would say that it is possible women can lead. After that, I represent. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for such a powerful presentation with what we are experiencing here in Kenya, just a few weeks to the election. So there's so much, and also we can get more women to take up these spaces. I can see that questions are already coming in. There are some also clarifications and comments. We will have a Q&A session after all the speakers have spoken. So you can either write it down on the chat or wait until the end of the final speaker session so that you can unmute and ask your question. Before we have our next speaker, who was Esther Acheng, I'd like to welcome Nairobi Women Rep Esther Passaris. I think I saw she had logged in. Helen, is she still here?
Yes, I am. Hi, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Florence?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Fatma, for the very insightful presentation and really setting the stage in terms of issues of women and governance. And so this is to really appreciate you. And of course, as Rachel has said, the ladies are looking forward to asking and inquiring more about some of the cases that we can duplicate as Kenya. But this time, I would want to welcome Madam Honorable Esther Passaris, a very good friend of many of us in this sector, the women empowerment, women organizations that are leading issues of governance and also ensuring that there's gender equality in Kenya. And so this is to welcome you, Madam Honorable Passaris, to really give us just the context for Kenya and also to be able to set the stage because as you all know, we're just a few weeks to election. And so there's a lot, and especially for the women, and we'd want to hear how is it going and some of the lessons learned, and especially what can other sectors, people who are not maybe actively in political seats, what can we do to support the women that are running, but also to be a voice to many to ensure that gender equality is achieved at the end of this election period, but also after election. Most welcome, Honorable Passaris. You can have the floor. Thank you very much.
Okay, so excuse that funny background. I've been trying to play around with my Zoom or whatever, and I'm getting this background, which I don't know how to get rid of. But anyway, morning, everybody. It's a very, very important discussion, especially us as women going through elections in the next 3-4 weeks. It's getting tougher and tougher for women out there because the expectations are very, very high on us. People, I also think we're an easy target. You know, when we go out campaigning, I feel, I always find myself asking the youth that gather around my car, why are you around my car? There's a man up there, the governor's in front, the senators in front, the MPs in front. Why are you at my car? But I think it's because we're women. They find us an easy target to rough up and ask for money and to basically extort. It's extortion, really. And it's somehow justified right now. We're in that space where people think it's justified to extort. So I think if we don't deal with poverty decisively, we're going to see less and less women. And I hope, I don't know whether you have a panelist from South Africa, but I know that South Africa had huge gains that were celebrated in terms of women getting into political space, and then they've seen a decline. So here in Kenya, when we're looking for not more than 1/3 of one gender, and we haven't even achieved that, it's the only part of the constitution that hasn't been achieved. And if we continue with this trajectory of the youth feeling entitled to extort because they look at you as a leader, oh, you're going to get this position, so it's our time to eat kind of thing, we're going to see less and less women getting into political space. But as Kenya, we celebrate the fact that we're going to have a deputy president as a woman. Our party, or my party, ODM, and the Azimio banner is actually fielding a woman as a deputy president. So we're celebrating that, and we're praying that that opens a path to female presidents. Martha Karua ran for president of Kenya, so did Charity Ngilu. So we've had women that have actually tried to lead, but the space for women in leadership is not going to be gained. We had five women MCAs in the county government of Nairobi. I really pray we can up that number, but it won't be significant. So we still have a lot of challenges in terms of our space as women.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and even for just providing the hope that came with the nomination of a woman to such a top, a very influential position. And it has raised the hopes of girls everywhere, girls who see someone who looks like them, which means they believe they can also get to that position, right? So I think we'll move on to I don't know whether you want to add something before we move on to our next speaker, Esther?
Unless you have a Q&A specifically, I mean, of course, we're calling for peaceful elections, because who are the people that suffer the most during an electioneering period that goes violent are women and children. And they, and it's tough already as it is. We've got many issues that we have to deal with as leaders. And one of them is teenage pregnancies. The other one is GBV. Of course, looking at the reversal of the gains in terms of choice in the US, again, we have a problem here. Family planning is a big issue. I think when we take up leadership as women, we should not be shy to take on the issues that affect and impact women. And I think our voices, because we're really the minority in every leadership span, our voices are not really being heard. But I think we have a huge task ahead of us. If we're going to deal with poverty, we're going to have to deal with family planning. If we're going to have to deal with family planning, we're going to have to deal with commodities and budgets. If we're going to deal with teenage pregnancies, we're going to have budgets to educate people and fight for comprehensive sex education in schools. So, when we're looking at electioneering periods and the space of women, I think there's so much more that we should do as women leaders. The task ahead for us is a lot, and we should take that mantle, whether it's in private sector, civil society, like you're doing, Florence, with the SDG caucus, or political offices.
Thank you so much, Esther. The ball is really in our court, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. And also, I want to say thank you for speaking about issues that others would rather bury their head in the sand, They call them controversial issues. They call them, vitus our mama. But these issues have to be spoken about and in public, right? For us to make any change.
Let me tell you, yesterday I was so touched. I was giving out checks for women economic empowerment, where groups that are registered come and apply for grants from the government. And I've been working with the intersex community, and they've organized themselves as intersex community, and they've come out. And, when we had the census in Kenya, it's progressive that we actually to see that this was the first time that they felt honored, that they received, it was what, $1,000 Sorry, I just somehow got cut off. The problem with using your phone. I'm in between campaigns, so I just parked somewhere so I could join this meeting because it's a very important conversation. But I just want to say that every community has to be felt that they have the leadership. You know, we should not discriminate. And for me, seeing the intersex, being grateful to receive $1,000, being recognized and understanding their plight and the plight of their children and the discrimination and lack of jobs. I think as leaders across the board, whether private sector, civil society or government, we need to live and let live. We need to make sure that we hold on to the slogan of those thorny issues that no one wants to touch, because those are human beings, brothers and sisters, just like we are, and they all deserve to have a voice.
Thank you, Esther. There's a question here that I'd like to share with you and see what your thoughts on elections. After elections, how, in your view, should the new county government ensure continuity or sustainability of current progress in terms of policy and practice?
Well, you know, the thing is, everything's cut out in the Constitution, but then we have this new buzzword called manifesto, which every leader that comes in lodges a manifesto. So every county government, which is the devolved governments, every county government will be having a manifesto, and based on their research and their findings, with their focal point. You know, like I saw Governor Igade, aspirant for Nairobi, is launched his manifesto today, and he said he's coming up with 850 million for Wezesha, to help women and youth be able to do business. Now, 850 million, I mean, I, as the woman representative for Nairobi County, have only had 100 million, of which only 25 million is for empowerment. So that would be a huge boost for the county of Nairobi. But the things that people want in any devolved county, one, they want good security, which will come from the executive. Two, they want to be able to have clean water in their houses, which is a manifesto from our presidential candidate as well as the devolved government of Nairobi County. Garbage collected or recycled, jobs for their youth, drug addiction centers, rehabilitation centers, drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers, education, qualifications, you know, better housing conditions, better sewage control. We had a study that was launched recently where we're finding that women are exchanging sex for water. Before it was sex for sanitary towels. So the vulnerability of women is still very high. So for myself, within Nairobi County, we're going to put up the first safe house. Of course, we want to have a safe house because we do have rape and defilement and sodomy going on in our communities. But we also want to make sure that we address the issues that allow perpetrators to continue preying on their victims. So what can we do? We've got a forensic lab that has been opened. So we're making a lot of gains. The question is, how do you bring all these dots together and be able to consolidate all the problems that you're trying to solve? So I believe that any government that's coming in has to hold on to the strengths that were achieved by the previous governor, and then look at how then to work on the things that you haven't achieved. Our president said it very well yesterday. He said, look, I'm not perfect. I've been your president for the last 10 years. I've done a few things right, which you can celebrate. There are a few things that I didn't do. And when I hand over the mantle, it is my hope and sincerity that the person who takes over will also do his part. No one's perfect. And then again, somebody else will take over. So as long as the electorate is informed and educated and driven by the desire to have a better life, I believe that we should be able to win in terms of basically attaining the 17. You know, we've got to use the 17 SDGs as a mark. We've also got Agenda 2060. We've got the Kenyan Vision 2030. We've got all these perimeters that have been set. So the question is, get back on track. We have to remember the pandemic has made us erode quite a number of the gains that we made, but we have to catch up.
Esther, thank you for being unapologetic, for being intentional about your leadership. And I'm sure you'll be leaving us at some point. So let me just read one comment from Mildred Ngesa. She says, we affirm you, Honorable Esther. You continue to represent the needs of women with steady dedication. We celebrate your leadership and all the best in the upcoming elections. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Easter Achieng. The floor is yours. So Esther will be dealing with what are the 3 most pressing gender and inclusion gaps in Kisumu and Siaya counties. She'll also be answering the question, what practical commitments do you need to see in the current political manifestos for girls and women in all their diversity? And lastly, she'll be tackling the issue of after elections. How do we ensure sustainability? Esther, take it away.
Thank you. It is great to hear people who are in politics speak, and then for us who do oversight and how to engage. Because when you look at the issues of inclusion gaps, we look at the issue of implementation of the issues of the policies. And when you look at what we state and what we implement, then we have challenges. When you look at the gaps, we talk about, for example, I'll give Kisumu County and its progress. In terms of the leadership, we have seen that the current governor has ensured that at least we are meeting the not more than 2/3 gender principle within the executive and also within the county assemblies. That was something which we can say we have at Kisumu County level that is done. Though in Siaya County, we've still not reached that particular level. And that is the same thing which we see across board in many of the counties. So when you look at the issues of gender and inclusion, we look at the issues of gender and diversity within the particular spaces and how to implement the framework. And in terms of the issue of presenting the framework, how do we then start engaging on one, inclusion in the budget processes and inclusion in the policy processes. We are at a level in which within Kisumu County, we last year launched the gender mainstreaming policy, and we're in the processes of looking at the policy framework being considered with getting regulations. But to get that bit of getting the regulations, do we have the people who will push the agenda within the county assembly? So there's what we have at the assembly, there's what we have at the executive. So it is important for us to ensure that within those particular spaces, it is not only women who are pushing this agenda, but we have men within those particular spaces who break down patriarchal systems and push our agenda at different levels. When we look at the issues of inclusion, we look at the issues of those with disability and looking at how then we can have disability inclusion very well versed. Within Kisumu County, we have a governor's advisor on issues of disability, Honorable Caroline Agwanda, who has done great work on ensuring that the policy framework of disability and even having funds which are being allocated specifically for disability to engage on issues of economic empowerment, but also looking at the structural frameworks, which then will ensure disability inclusion. But we look at it that whilst we have the policy frameworks going and structures being put in place, do we have the correct education, which then ensures that those with disability who need to hear this information are well engaged? So that is what we look at the issues of public participation. The gap in public participation needs to be engaged on to ensure that when we say nothing for us without us, then we are able to engage a whole lot more holistically. Inclusion also looks at the issue of issues of gender identity and the issues of sexual orientation. Because when we think about the issues of gender, we tend to conflate the issues of gender and leave out the key issues of this community of persons who also exist within our midst. Yes, we have the issue of the Non-Discrimination Act, but still the case is in court, but still does not mean that they do not exist within our spaces. Within the systems of health, well laid out spaces for them to engage, but within political spaces, we still have a challenge where we are not seeing holistic issues of gender, equality, sexual orientation, and diversity issues, which is something which exists in our social structures. When we look at these manifestos, we also tend to see that one, are they gendered? Do they look at the spaces where we can say that this is what we actually allocated? And if it's located, what is the presence of women in these particular spaces? In political campaigns, we tend to see many women in political campaign processes. They lead certain spaces in campaigns, whether it is at the governor's level, whether it is at the MP, whether it's at the Senate. We have many women in political campaign processes. But one of the challenges which we're having is that in terms of now getting them to the ballot, how many of the women are actually supported to be able to get to the ballot, because their manifestos should actually include the issues of women and girls. But sometimes because of patriarchy, we are unable to ensure that we have women and girls issues put in the campaign agenda. So for example, we are talking about the issues of GBV. In terms of GBV, we have certain spaces where we say within the health systems, we are supposed to be having the GBV units, but the GBV units must actually be supported and have the staff, adequate staff to engage on the same. We come from a Kisumu, which is always a red zone. And in Kisumu, it is red because during political processes, we've had issues where women have been raped. And what we are looking for is the issues of reparation. It has come out in different reports that when such things happen, periodically during elections, which we look at reflection from 1992, there have been clashes. And whenever there's clashes, we find that rape is used as a tool of conflict. But when you're looking at reparation for these particular ones, those gaps on the issues of actually preventing violence against women, which include rape and include physical violence and verbal violence, is something which we still need to address. So when we look at the kind of temperature, we still find that Kisumu is still considered as a red zone. It is red because whenever there's any issue or during the political period, it becomes one of the volatile spaces. And when it's volatile, we still find that women then go into camps, and even within those particular camps, there's no engagement in terms of their security. So one of the things which we're looking at is that we must also look at, does the political manifesto look at the issues of UN Resolution 1325, which protects women and girls during conflict, which protects and uses an intersectional approach to ensure that we locate the issues which then we want in the political manifestos and ensure that we do not disrupt the lives of communities because of politics. So in terms of what we look at in the new county, if we say that we are looking at what we want to engage on in Kisumu County, we looked at what, for example, the incumbent, Governor Nyong'o, said about Think 10. Under the Think 10, we have looked at progress where we have got an investment in sexual reproductive health rights within certain facilities, and that one we say is a tick. We need most facilities to then engage at a lower level so that we have more investment in issues of sexual reproductive health and rights. In the last time, in terms of his engagement, we got a tick in the issues of trade and development. We need to ensure that when we're talking about the trade and development, it is more at the community level and that more women are able to participate and engage in the structures which are being put in place. So for Kisumu County, we can say we have been more progressive and more engaged, and we can see the practical application of the nature of things that we are doing. At the level in which we talk about, let's say Sia County, when you're talking about issues of economic empowerment and taking advantage of the Lake Region economic bloc and the issue of the blue economy. Both counties are engaging on the issues of the blue economy, but we need to engage a whole lot more to deal with the issues of gender-based violence within the blue economy, for example, on the issue of sex for fish within those particular spaces. So when you look at the blue economy, how are women engaged at a whole lot level, and how are we deliberately ensuring that within the political manifestos that the issues of economic empowerment situates the issues of women who are in the ecological space and are in the blue economy to be able to do trade and business without facing different forms of violence. So this is something which we want to see in the political manifesto, that the issues of access to resources and utilization of those resources is something which is open and we can engage upon. When we look at the issue of the progress to ensure that continuity, for example, Kisumu County is different because there's the incumbent, and the incumbent is campaigning, and probably if the incumbent wins, there'll be a continuity of the processes to engage on. In Sia County, where we are seeing a transition, it means that we are looking at leveraging on the issues of the different persons who are engaging. Looking at the political manifesto, it is important for us to look at whoever wants to be governor, that are they really unpacking these particular issues, or are they tokenistic talks, and look at their previous engagement and look at the political trail. So when we look at the political trail, one of the questions which then we should be able to ask, even during this particular process, is that before voting just for the party, how are you then engaging the party to actually ensure that women are in the political spaces? One of the parties, in fact, through the number of parties which then are in these particular spaces, we have seen more women engaged at the higher level. What we would like to see more for me in this particular space is more women engaged in management of the political parties, and the management should not ensure that we have fiascos where women are left behind. So I noticed that when we talked about, even from the leader, Mheshimiwa Madam Fatma, when we say that more women, we keep on having the challenge of lesser women in the different spaces. We look at the first government, under devolution, within Kisumu County, we had 20 women in the county assembly, both nominated and elected, 7 elected women in the county assembly of Kisumu, for example. When we go into the second year, it reduced. We had less women in the county assembly. And now this time, even when we're talking about the nomination processes, we have less women who passed with the tickets to be able to then get into the spaces for elective politics. So one of our challenges is that how do we sustain the momentum so that we are constantly not losing out in positions of women in leadership, and that how we then also work with political parties to ensure that we sustain the visibility and the voices of women at different levels. This, for me, will ensure that at a different level, we'll be able to showcase that we can have an intersectional and an intergenerational political space. Our political movements, in my opinion, are not as vibrant as they used to be. We are not recruiting as we should. So we need to have a better engagement in investing in political movements. And when you're investing in political movements, what we must do is to look at younger women, those with disability, those who come from the different spaces or have different sexual orientations, and start engaging them at a different level, so that then we do not always have a conflict where we are talking about issues of ageism, where it is perceived that older women occupy all the space, or that younger women are pushing too hard. We have a space for everyone, but only if we have better and solid processes. So if you look at the issues of engagement in policy and practice, we have policy frameworks which are robust. We have policy frameworks which have been put in place, but implementation of those policy frameworks is something which we need to also look at. We have been pushing for the issue of the not more than 2/3 principle for a long time. We keep on being thwarted, but it means that how do we reignite that particular process at the national level to ensure that representation is not only through the nomination processes, but we look at it that, yes, we have had spaces in boards, more women in boards. We have had spaces where more women are in different other spaces, not only in the political forums, but we need to have their stories told so that we can engage to have a different framing in practice of what these women are doing. So when you look at this issue, so when we look at this particular issue, we are also saying that between the issues of access, we have access. How do we then ensure that we are more accountable and that we are able to talk about our stories differently as women within these political spaces? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Easter. And I really like that you've talked about engaging men, because we need male allies. It is not a war between men and women. Collectively, if we work together, irrespective of gender, we can achieve much more. So now we will move on to Jane Anyango from Polycom. Jane Anyango, are you here? Can you hear us? Is your connection okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
Please go right ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I know I was not able to introduce myself earlier. I had issues with my internet. My name is Jane Anyango from Polycom Development Project based in Kibera. So we work with women and girls living in the informal settlements, and we are trying to amplify the voices of these women and girls in different spaces. We also work a lot with adolescent girls through schools. So we work with girls through 50 schools. We have this platform we call the Talking Boxes, where we are able to listen to their voices and just get their priorities or issues on priority is that they the issues that they want us to prioritize when we are addressing their issues. So I'm going to talk about the social protection and what should be prioritized. So first, I want to talk about inclusivity and intersectionality. So when we are talking about social protection, we should really understand whether it is helping, like it's addressing the issues that it is meant for. Because at times it's a decision that is not really made with the people. I'm not really sure, I've never seen the mapping tool to know who is eligible for what. But what I know is that it is not really considering the women in their diversity. So I think it's very important for us to consider inclusivity and intersectionality. And then another thing is that how accessible is it? Like we have heard of women who have been asked, who have been asked for favors for them to be able to access something that is really meant for them. We have heard of children who are abused trying to access bursaries. We have heard of people who are asked for to bribe their way in for them to be able to access, like even the transfer for the older persons or the orphans that we have in the villages. So I think it's very important for us also to know that the personnel who are handling these issues, what languages are they using? Are they really, do they really understand the people that they are serving? Because it's not really a favor. It's something that people should access without favors. And I also want to talk about awareness. Are the people really aware that this is something that is there for them? Like right now, we are in our political period. We've had politicians using issues around social protection for their own can I tell it, a political mileage. We have had people like talking about, we have been able to give you this. So when are the common people going to understand that this is it's their right to be able to access these spaces, these opportunities, and it is not really a favor from the parliamentarians, and even not even from the politicians, and even just go for them, not wait to be persuaded or maybe convinced to go for them. And then also looking at the priorities that the political aspirants in Nairobi should consider in their manifestos. I think they should really talk to the people. We should have the people driven processes. They should even validate the manifestos that they already have with the people before they understand that it's really for the people. Like right now, you'll hear, we have the big celebrated express way that we really isn't mobility for the motorists. What about the common person? We have very few footbridges if you're looking at it. If you look at the many people coming from our informal settlements who have to walk a very long way, and then you have to really walk again to cross over. And then you ask yourself, who is really these roads for? Must we just consider the higher people when we are developing our manifestos? Do we really talk to the people and understand what they really need, as opposed to what we feel as politicians that will make us shine, and shining for who? I'm happy that we have our women rep here, who has, I think she has really demonstrated that it is possible to work with the people, where we have all the sub-county committees, for the NGAF, for NGAF. And then we're also talking about recommendations for practical actions to address lack of gender sensitivity and responsiveness to girls and women. So I think the first recommendation that I want to talk about is like having women in their diversity in the various committees, so that people are talking about their own issues and giving recommendations or prioritizing issues that really speak to them. And then I also want to talk about allocation of budgets on specific needs of women and girls. I know these ones we have talked about, and especially issues around sanitary towels that have been talked about, but it has never been enough. In other areas we have had where the girls only get sanitary towels once in a year. So let us prioritize women and girls issues when we are doing our budgets. And then it is also good to support community-led developments, because the communities, they know what works for them. They know the important things, the things that are important to them. I know someone talked about our women rep talked about the prioritizing access to water, which is it's a big problem. People still, we are talking about COVID. We don't even have water to clean our own houses. Then where would you get water to clean your hands? We still have girls going to school without bathing. We have women who cannot clean their houses because they cannot access water. People resort to buying food as opposed to cooking their own houses because they cannot access water, which is really bad. So I think it's good, really good to prioritize listening to communities, getting those communities together, and planning based on what their priorities are. And then proactive legislation. I know we have a big problem in our country right now, and I'm happy that we have our politicians in the House where we are trying to please, can I say, political political party adherents as opposed to real leaders. And I'm very worried about the MCAs that we are going to get because, they're just fake, not people who really understand what legislation is all about. We have had people in parliament who are not able to legislate at all, but they are there because of their political parties preferred them. So this is a problem that we're going to have, but I'm just praying that we are able to have leaders who can legislate, who can really come up with proper laws that can govern how we move together in this country, or can prioritize women and girls issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jane. And you have brought up a number of issues, and one of them that I have picked is gender responsive policies. You remember when we had COVID-19 and we had the stay-at-home directive, those who were affected the most were women and girls. Those who are living in gender-based violence, environments, were stuck at home with their perpetrators. Pregnant women could not seek, medical help at their time of need. So there's great need for gender-responsive policies. There are questions that have been asked for Jane. We will have a Q&A session, just a reminder, at the end of the final speaker session. So I'd like to call upon Mercy Jelimo, who is our speaker, the next speaker. Mercy, are you still here with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Rachel.
Excellent, excellent. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the speakers that have come before me. I think they've laid a very good background to our discussion for the day. So I was asked to talk about the barriers that we face as women and girl rights organization when it comes to effective engagement in the policy spaces. And some of those barriers have actually been highlighted by Mheshimiwa Fatma from Tanzania and Mheshimiwa Pasaris. I think those are the barriers, but I'll just like to focus on some of the 5 barriers that come to mind when we talk about women and girls' rights organizations participation in the policy-making process. So one of the barriers is the inaccessibility of policy-making processes. And we feel this both at the national, regional, and global level, where these spaces, the policy spaces, are really inaccessible for women and girl rights organization. One, because of cost issues that are expected. Sometimes you're expected to bear the cost, perhaps even at the local level where meetings are being held, you find that it is inaccessible, and women organizations, and also by extension, women themselves cannot access these spaces. Secondly, when it comes to language barrier, and beyond just language being about the ethnic or the language that is used, you find that also sometimes the conversation is a bit technical. The discussions are really not for common mwananchi, whereas policies are being made for the mwananchi. The discussions and the language that is used is seems to be leaving out women and women rights organization. The other one, and this we see at the global level, is the application process to just be in these policy making spaces, that sometimes the requirements, when it comes to visa, it comes to, hotel cost, accommodation, now we are in the COVID context where we are expected to join in virtually, and yet we most, let me just use the word most, of the women's rights and girl organizations do not have sometimes access to some of these technologies that might make their participation easier. So you find that our participation as a women's rights organization is limited to these policy spaces. The second barrier is lack of information, and I would also like to link this to unavailability of data. You know, the way policy is structured, and effective policy to be effective, for effective policy making, you need evidence. But you find that us as women's rights organizations and girls' rights organizations, we do not have access to this data that might provide evidence to be able then to engage with policy makers. And in instances where we have this data, you find that the data is presented in ways that is also not useful. You have data that you can't use. The other thing is that hardly do the available data is disaggregated. You find that you have data, but this data is not telling you anything. You just find, you know, 10 people did A, B, C, D, but out of these 10 people, what are the issues? What are the descriptions of this or identities of these people? Mheshimiwa Pasaris Easter has also talked about the aspect about intersectionality and inclusion, that sometimes figures cannot tell you the real stories. And beyond data, data is just not about numbers. It's also about the experiences. How are people feeling about this issue? So if you do not have this evidence in place and you are not able to table this evidence, then you are influence when it comes to policy making, your engagement with policymakers then becomes somewhat not very effective. The other barrier that I'll also like to touch on is on accountability mechanisms. You find that women's rights and girl rights organization engage in the policy making processes, but because of clear-cut accountability mechanisms about how then do we ensure that the things that we talk about, the policy that we pass or enact are implemented. We do not have this, and these policy makers in most of the cases are also not accountable to us as a very significant constituency in policy making processes. So we get to participate in these policy processes, but we have difficulties in, you know, checking the effectiveness or even having follow-throughs of these discussions that we have with policymakers. Are they implementing? What are the challenges beyond the commitments that these policymakers make? Are they following through? Are they enacting those policies as we suggested? You know, sometimes when you engage in the process, there are certain things that you suggest, but the policymakers interpret them differently and end up making policies that do not necessarily answer to the challenges or the things that were raised.
Mercy, you have a minute to go. Your final comments, please.
Thank you. The other fourth and most, I think, critical point for me is the lack of funding to women and girl rights organization. That whereas available evidence is showing us that in the last 3 years, there has been an increase in investment to civil society organization, there has been a decline to women's rights organization, to funding to women's rights organization, and that this funding are typically very small scale and short-term funding that then impedes on the effectiveness of women and girl rights organization to engage. The other one is on uncoordinated efforts by women and girl rights organization, that we tend to work as in silos, and our efforts are not very coordinated. So you find that we have women's some women's rights organizations are already in certain policy stages, and others are starting. So instead of us working together, coordinating our efforts to work together to make sure that we have impact, because policy process is a really tedious process. It takes time, it takes resources. So it's important for us as the actors, the women and girl rights organization, to come together and work together and coordinate our efforts if we are to make any significant impact. If I still have time, maybe I could then touch on some of the programs and systems and investments that we need to put in place to address some of those barriers that I have highlighted. And not just to say that despite these barriers, women and girl rights organizations have been able to make a significant influence in policy making processes. So let that not be lost on us, that we have and we continue to make impact. You look at after our 2013 election, I'm speaking in the Kenyan context, we have had very inclusive policies coming from both the National Assembly and the County Assembly. And we can argue that it is because of the participation of women leaders and women's rights organizations in those processes. So some of the quick programs.
Thank you. Maybe you can take it up during the Q&A session, if you don't mind, so that we can allow the next speaker to address what do CSOs, donors, governments, UN agencies, and other stakeholders need to understand and consider about girls' and women's experiences, their needs, their challenges, opportunities when designing policies, budget, and programs. So Ruthie Kimani, can you hear us? Yes, I can see you're online. Yes,
can
please,
you hear me?
the floor is yours. We can hear you very.
Awesome. Thank you. For the speakers who have spoken before me. I have really learned a lot in the different spaces. And as we are calling this time a time for bold commitments and actions during the general elections. I think this is in the Kenyan context. So for me, it is a question that what do CSOs, donors, and governments need to understand as they are coming up with budgets, as they are coming up with policies, as they are coming up with programs that will ensure inclusivity, that will ensure diversity, that will ensure equity when you're talking about gender equality. I think, why is it important to consider gender in development? That is the first question I would want to put out there. And for me, when we consider gender in development, it is a way of looking at how social norms and power structures impact on the lives and opportunities available to different groups of men and women. And understanding that men, women, girls, and boys experience poverty differently and face different barriers in accessing services, economic resources, and political opportunities help target interventions. And there is need to acknowledge and incorporate gender inequalities into programs and analysis, which is extremely important for both from a human rights perspective and to maximize impact and social economic development. My big idea on what CSOs, donors, governments, and UN agencies and other stakeholders need to understand in order to, when they are considering policies, budgets, and programs for the women, my big idea is to present women as the eyes of peace. As I feel in Kenya, well, I'm Kenyan, so speaking from the Kenyan context, I would propose that we start seeing women as the eyes of peace, because women are nurturers. Women are the ones who face major, if not all, of social economic impacts. And also when we talk about election violence, women are the ones who nurture children. They are the ones who are left at home. Most of the time, they're the ones who are left bereaved without you know, sometimes most of them are not breadwinners. So they lose their husbands to violence and other issues when you talk about also alcohol and drugs. So we need to start seeing women as the eyes of peace, because one, women are nurturers. Women amplify. You say when you give a woman a house, she gives you back a home. Women are also wise counsel. We are told that women have sixth sense and we have intuition. So it is wise to listen to women because they are wise counsels. And also, there is a proverb, an African proverb that goes, when you educate a woman, you educate a community. So let's see women as educators. And my second idea on what these bodies should do when considering coming up with gender equal, or rather gender sensitive policies that enhance sustainable development is I'd propose taking a human-centered design thinking approach. And what is human-centered design? It is a way of thinking that places the people you are trying to serve and other important stakeholders at the center of the design, innovation, and implementation process. When we look at sustainable development, when we talk about development as it is, we need to include the female voice. And that's what we have majorly heard from the speakers who have spoken before me. When coming up with policies, when coming up with bills and laws, we need to include the women's voice. And when we talk about coming up with policies that enhance that enable a woman to thrive in the society, we need to approach it through a human-centered design process where we place the woman at the center of the decision-making. Meaning, if you were to come up with a policy in a particular area or in a particular community, you need to consider one, language. What language are you using? Does the woman understand? What does the woman need? What does the women in that particular community, what do the women in that particular community need? And first, do they understand your language? So if they don't understand your language, can you find someone in the same community who is able to become the middle person to translate maybe? The other thing is communication. And I don't know if we have communication specialists in the house, but when it comes to communication, communication is not only how you say it, it is what you're saying, how you say it, and what you're using to say it. So when you're asking ourselves, we want women to thrive. For example, let me take just women in Taita Saventa, and that's just an example, yeah? So how can we communicate effectively? Maybe what worked for Kisumu will not work for Taita Taveta. So most of the times people come up with policies that are one size fits all, yeah? And I think when we talk about even county governments, they come up with policies that work in the particular county because different geographical places require different attention. So when we are talking about innovating, when we are talking about implementation of policies, we cannot have a one size fits all approach. So we need to know, do they understand your language? How are you communicating? What modes of communication are you using? You need to innovate for a particular setup, for a particular community, and they will definitely be different from all, because what one woman needs in Mandera will definitely not be what the other woman needs in Mombasa, for example. So there is also need to tailor-make experiences. When we talk about participatory action research, where you are coming up with policies that favor a particular community, you need to tailor-make experiences that are specific to that community. And we also need to ensure cross-generational knowledge sharing. I am passionate about millennial issues and Gen Z issues, and we have heard a lot of complaints, if I may, for lack of a better word at this particular moment. So we have had, you will hear a boss saying, millennials are lazy, millennials don't want to come to work, millennials do this, they don't do that. Yeah. So what happens when you look at such a setting? We have to have cross-generational knowledge sharing. What we need to ask ourselves, for the older generation, what worked for them? What is working for this young generation? And what will work for the future? So we need to have all these people included included on the table so that they can come up with something that balances, that fits the cross-generational approaches to implementation, to coming up with policies, to coming up with budgets and considerations and programs in particular communities and particular contexts. And there is also need, I think the just immediate speaker, Mercy, or the previous one, Jane, I think, mentioned collaboration. And sometimes we find organizations working as silos, CSOs working independently. And we have seen the need for governments, for CSOs, for NGOs, and also UN agencies coming together to come up with policies, to come up with programs that fit, the programs that ensure that these people, the needs of these people are met. There is need for collaboration. When you talk about inclusion, when you talk about equity, when you talk about diversity, when we start collaborating, there is need to understand diversity. There is need to include men, for example. There is need to include the younger people, the older people, even children, yeah? Because different people face and are affected by problems differently, even in a certain community. So how then can we design policies, opportunities, budgets, and programs that enhance women's experiences? We have to note that it is important to have the voice of women in political forums. We have seen the call for having more gender representation in parliaments, in political parties. Someone mentioned that. And it is important to include the women in participatory research and also the men when you start talking about equity. My call would be to listen when we talk about women as the eyes of peace. We need to listen, and not listening to respond, but listening to understand. I think many other times we have maybe, forgive me if we have policymakers in the room, but most of the times you will find people coming up with policies which they think fit a particular group. I think it's time for people now to listen to the people they are innovating for, the people that they are coming with the policies for. Because again, a one-size-fits-all approach we have seen is not working, and we need to innovate, to design, to come up with policies and programs that fit, that fit with a particular group. In closing, I would ask these bodies, the CSOs, NGOs, UN agencies, and other bodies and governments and other bodies associated, or rather in the political spaces, policy-making spaces, and such programs, that there is need to build confidence by engaging women in actively participating in participatory action. Because when we talk about participatory action research, it involves the people you are trying to solve the problems for. For example, we had Honorable Esther Parsaris talk about when the political leaders are coming up with manifestos, they have to look at the different arms of government. For example, the executive has to ensure there is security, but many of the times we implement a one-size-fits-all approach across different towns, across different communities, because we think that's what they need. Yeah, we think when you talk about security, we just think about policemen, we just think about guards and whatnot. But we have to consider that the levels of securities in different areas are different, And there is need to look at what is really ailing the security of a particular estate, or rather a particular ward, or a town, for example. So there is need first to involve the whole community, to involve the men, to involve the girls, boys, and also the older generation, to come up with systems that favor them. And we have seen that there are more movements now and activists calling for gender equality and women empowerment. There is need for these bodies to encourage collaboration among women and the community at large. So that is my call to action. And let us see women as the eyes of peace, because again, they are the nurturers, they amplify, they are the wise counsel, and they act as educators in the society. Thank you, thank you. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Excellent insights, Ruthie. And I've picked two key aspects of your presentation, so to speak. Human-centered design. I even went to Google to get the definition so I can see how to apply it in the work that I do. And to answer your question, yes, we have communication specialists in the room. So you're speaking to people and you're using language that we communicators use. So thank you for speaking to that niche. And indeed, one size does not fit all. Yeah, it doesn't. So finally, our final speakers of this morning session, we have Raaya Ala Karim, who is joining us, I think, from Lamu. She'll have 10 minutes to speak about gender knowledge. She'll have 10 minutes to speak about the current electioneering period, giving us a context about the current situation and beyond, and where priorities should lie. And I saw in the chat that she had asked whether she can speak in Kiswahili. I think that's very okay, Raaya, so you can do that. And after Raaya, we'll have Honorable Esna Nyara. So she will also be speaking to the same topic. So Raaya, is your connection okay? Raaya, unatusikia? Let me see if she's online. Raaya? Raaya Ahmed? And in case she's having connection problems, maybe Honorable Esna Nyara, you can go first, and then we have Raaya to speak as our final speaker. Honorable Esna?
Yes. Hello.
Apollo.
Toka.
Hello. Hi, Raaya. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Raaya Famau Ahmed. I prefer speaking in Kiswahili, please. So, huyu ni Raaya Famau Ahmed. Yeah, you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Raaya Famau Ahmed, na mimi ni mkurugenzi mkuu na mwanzilishi wa shirika la kina mama la kipekee ambalo liko hapa Lamu, linaloitwa Lamu Women Alliance, na pia ni mmoja wa memba wa Gender Knowledge Hub. Na katika shirika letu sisi tunaangalia mambo matano muhimu ambayo yanamfaidi mwanamke. Moja ni elimu, hususan elimu ya msichana. Nyingine ni kuangazia kuhusu dhulma za kijinsia zinazotendewa wasichana na wanawake. Nyingine ni namna gani ya kuhamasisha wanawake kuweza kufanya biashara na kujikimu kimaisha, that is socio-economic empowerment, na masuala ya mazingira. Kwa sababu tunaona hivi sasa ni muhimu sana wanawake pia nao kuweza kutoa sauti zao katika mambo ya kimazingira, kwa sababu mambo yakienda vibaya mazingira yakiharibiwa, kina mama nao wanaathirika. Kwa hivyo hayo ni baadhi ya mambo ambayo sisi tunafanya katika hichi kikundi, tukielezea wenzetu mambo kama hayo, ambapo tunafika paka nyanjani kuwaelezea. Napenda kusema jambo hili muhimu hivi sasa, kwa sababu kura inakuja. Tunapenda yani jambo moja lishughulikiwe ni kuhusu bei ya bidhaa. Hii tungefurahi sisi kama kina mama kama bei ya bidhaa zingeshukishwa chini, kwa sababu hivi sasa maisha yamekuwa ghali. Watu wamekuwa hawana tena pesa kwa sababu ya mafuta kupanda, vitu vyote vimepanda. Imekuwa tabu wanawake hususan kujikimu kimaisha. Sasa kama huwezi hata kulisha familia, ni tabu sasa, yani watu kuendelea na maisha yao. Kwa hivyo muhimu ingekuwa kabla ya kura, lakini hivi sasa naona kila mtu akifanya kampeni, hakuna mtu ambaye anataja kuhusu chakula, na chakula ni muhimu. Mama akienda kufanya kibarua cha kufua nguo, akipawa 200, ilikuwa kwa zamani anaweza kwenda kununua mfuko wa unga wa sima na sukuma na makaa apikie familia. Sasa hivi ukifanya kibarua cha kufua, ukipawa 200, haitoshi hata kununua unga wa sima peke yake, leave alone kwenda kutafuta kitoweo au mboga, ambapo sasa hivi maisha yamekuwa magumu sana. Kwa hivyo tungependa yani jambo kama hili wao waliangazie, lakini hivi sasa kwa sababu ya kampeni naona kama wanasiasa hawaliangazii, wala hakuna tena time ya kushukisha bei ya bidhaa. Jambo lingine muhimu ambalo linafaa liangaziwe ni kuhusu umilikaji wa ardhi kwa wanawake hususan. Si wanawake wengi ambao wanamiliki ardhi. Kwa hivyo tunaomba serikali itakayokuingia iweze kuangazia mambo kama haya. Sasa hivi ardhi ni asset ambayo kila mtu akiwa nayo anapata manufaa. Huku Lamu kumefanywa mradi wa LAPSSET, na 1% kubwa ya wale waliolipwa ridhaa za kuweza kufanya mradi huu walikuwa ni wanaume. Kwa hivyo kwa sababu sisi hatumiliki ardhi, hatukuweza kulipwa kama wanawake. Na hii ikaleta tabu nyingi kwa wanawake, kwa sababu pale pahali ambako mwanamke zamani alikuwa akiishi ikabidi aondoshwe kwa sababu mume wake amepawa ridhaa na serikali. Serikali kuna mradi nataka kutekeleza pale. Kwa hivyo hilo ni la kwanza, kuondolewa pahali pako pajadi. Ya pili ni pesa ambazo familia yako ililipwa si zako, ni za bwana. Lingine ambalo lilileta shida ni kuwa jamii ya watu wa Lamu wengi ni Waislamu, na Uislamu unaruhusu mabwana zetu waoe kutoka 1 mpaka mabibi 4. Kwa hivyo walipopata pesa hizi, mabwana zetu wengi wakaenda kwenye holiday ya kuongeza mabibi na mpango wa kando. Kwa hivyo mabwana wakatukimbia, pesa hatuna, pale pahali ambako tulikuwa tunakaa hatuwezi tena. Kwa hivyo mambo ya dhulma yakazidi, kwa sababu tukaachiwa kuangalia familia na sisi wenyewe hatuwezi kujikimu kimaisha. Ndio wasichana wetu wakati ule wa corona wengi wakapata mimba za mapema, wengi wakaozwa. Hizi ni baadhi ya dhulma ambazo zafanyika: wasichana kuolewa mapema, wasichana kutiwa mimba, wasichana kunajisiwa, na mambo ya dhulma ambayo yanafanyika kwenye ndoa. Kwa hivyo haya ni mambo ambayo pia tunataka serikali ambazo zitaingia yaweze kushughulikia kwa kiasi kikubwa. Inasikitisha hivi sasa wanawake wengi ndio wanaopiga kura, wanawake wengi ndio wanaofanya kampeni, lakini wanaume wetu hawa wametumikia kipindi chao cha bunge miaka 5 na wakakataa kutupitishia ile sheria ya 2/3 gender rule, ambayo ile tungepata nafasi nyingi. Wameleta nafasi kisiasa. Sasa hivi wanatuambia mwakilishi wa wanawake huyu yuko, atakuwa makamu wa rais, ndio sisi tupige serikali hini kura. Lakini mbele kulikuwa kuna mambo mazuri ambayo kama sheria ingebadilishwa kule bunge, sisi tungefaidika kama wanawake. Kwa hivyo nafikiri pia ni wakati muafaka na sisi wanawake tuamke na tuache kutumiwa kila sisi, badala ya kuwa ni wapigaji makofi kila mpira ukichezwa. Tunafaa sasa hivi na sisi pia tuwe ni wachezaji bora, na watu watusikize sisi kama wanawake. Asante.
Asante sana Raya kwa kuongea kwa lugha ya mama. Kiswahili wakiongea unaelewa hata kushinda Kizungu. Kwa hivyo nashukuru sana. Honorable Esna.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Nyaramba. I hope I'm audible enough.
You're very audible.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, I want to say a big thank you for the panelists. I've really learned a lot from Honorable Esther Passaris, the Honorable from Tanzania, my role model in Kisumu, Esther. Truly, sometimes we think the country is getting somewhere until when you notice that there's a lot of violence happening against women. And now that we're approaching election, it's 26 days to go. And we all will be there. We don't know what will happen, but we've seen women aspirants being raped. We've seen women aspirants being molested. We've seen them being mishandled, even in public. And I pray that the first thing that is supposed to be done is to give these women security. We need to see our women who are vying in male-dominated seats, except the women rep seat, to be given enough coverage, enough security, and even for them also to have somewhere they can cry at the end of the day. Because I'm looking at a situation where we vote them, maybe the elections are stolen kama kawaida, and then this woman needs somebody to cry to. And in Kenya, we don't have a debriefing center. So I'm looking at that mama. She vied. She was a very strong woman. She has tried her best. She's number 2. You know, for men, you as a woman being an aspirant, if you vie and win, then it means you are a good woman. You are a wife. You become now their wife. You become their sister. But if you vie and lose, you may end up even losing your family. So where is this woman going to cry at the end of the day? We can take this and maybe look at how we can get counselors that will work after election. We can also look at a way we can get the women who are vying be trained on their personal security, how they can handle their internet, how they can handle their location, because some of them you might even find you find their locations gives you to where exactly they are. So hiding the location, most women don't know. For this period that is remaining, this is the last leg of the campaigns, and it's the most dangerous time for women. Because this is the time when you'll find like a woman wants to go for votes hunting, and this is mostly done at night. She's a mother, she's a wife. So if the husband does not even agree to the night whatever, you'll find like mostly mwanaume atakwambia enda kwa mabwana zako. And yet he knows very well what you're doing, unaenda kutafuta kura. So this woman, kama hana mtu mwenye atakuja kumwambia like, now this is what we need. We need you to be strong. We need you to hide your location. If you're getting out from one place to another, then hide your location. Make sure nobody knows where you are through the net. The person that is where you are, that is the meeting point, is the only person who needs to know where you are. Then number 2, also the women who are on top there, to like now Akina Honorable Passaris, that those women who are vying for MCA, for MP, at least Honorable Passaris have been up there. She understands exactly what this other woman can do or what can help her get somewhere. So she can also try, and it's like a mentorship, I think, for 2-3 weeks. And then the other lady will also now understand the dynamics of politics, because mostly as women, I think we get into politics more when we're not ready. We start this politic thing very late. By the time we say now we are going to do ABCD, you realize time has caught up with us. Because most women started campaigns around May, April. The rest that were to maybe leave their offices and all that started when they left office, maybe in February. But the men did not leave the political campaigns. Because for me, what I know is politics, immediately the winner is declared, campaign starts. And for us as women, we don't have that muscle of doing the campaigns for another 4 years. We wait until the last minute. And this waiting always does not give us what we want. So I'm looking at a situation where, number one, we have a debriefing center, a counseling, where women can come and cry and get back to themselves. Because mostly when we get out of politics, we get into depression. Mostly when we go for politics and you don't get what you wanted, you're left, you're dumped, you're done what, you end up now feeling like you don't even deserve to be where your people are. Sometimes you're raped. Who are you going to run to? Because if you run to your community, they will laugh at you. You need a place where you can run to and get that help. Psychologically, you're just drained. Physically, you're drained. Emotionally, you're drained. Even spiritually. These places where we can get this for women. Then the sessions also don't need to only start now from now up to elections. No. I think this is something that is supposed to be there. Once we have a program that starts now, we don't need to leave it here. We continue with it to the next election, to the next election. So as at least a woman knows, if I don't make it, if I feel like I need to cry, if I feel like I need to go and deprive myself, let me go to a center where there's women, there's people who will understand what I've been through, so as they can help me get back to myself. And then lastly, the young generation, that is the young women who are vying. Like the young women Democrats. To annex into that, we have these women vying in even MP positions. Like now we have a girl who is vying for MP, 24 years old in Kisii. And she's the first woman to vie for MP where Onyonka has been for all these years. Meaning, at least there's something. So these women, at the end of the day, you went into politics at a young age, you're not married. Now you're going to get married. They will look at you as an empowered woman. And mostly men fear an empowered woman. How will we manage to at least make sure this empowered woman, the woman who ran for office as an MP, as an MC, as a governor, also becomes a mother and a wife? It's by having these sessions. It's by having a session that will let them know, as long as you are a leader, yes, you are a woman, still you need to be a wife, you need to be a daughter, you need to be a mother and a sister.
Mheshimiwa, you have a minute, your final concluding remarks.
Yes, and I was concluding by saying, now the factors that everybody has spoken about, Easter spoke about Kisumu being a red zone. I think Kisii this time is also a red zone on its own, because it's fighting, and always the people that suffers are women. So I'm really praying that even the government, the current government, will look at a way women can be given their own space. You saw what happened to Martha Karua when she came to Kisii. So that one shows you that peace is all we'll pray for. But again, we must train our women who are mostly in the forefront on how to defend themselves, on how to protect themselves. They are supposed to be told, even through media, that this is what you're supposed to do, be found at the right place and at the right time. I think I'll end it there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. Number one, that takeaway from your presentation is online security training. And it doesn't need to just happen before elections. We also need to have continuous training for women in leadership, for women supporting the leaders. The training needs to be continuous. And we also need to have grieving centers. I was Googling and seeing that it's South Africa that has a grieving center. I don't know which other country has a grieving center. So very pertinent issues to think about. So now we are in the Q&A session. I want to open up the floor. If there's anyone who has a question, I saw that Mildred had asked a question, but then she was answered in the chat. Is there anyone who would like to ask their question by either unmuting themselves or posting on the chat? Feel free to do so. The session is now open for questions to the panelists. You can raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and then I will reach out to you and ask you to unmute your mic. Any questions or even comments? Something you'd like to add to what the panelists have spoken about? Fatma had said she couldn't hear. I hope she's hearing us now. So I'll just read out the answer to Mildred's question. Mildred had asked, what is ungenuine democracy? And Fatma said, hi, Mildred, in response to your question, genuine democracy ensures that all individuals enjoy equal and effective protection. Genuine democracy was adopted on 24th January 2013 at the Conference of International Non-Government Organizations of the Council of Europe. Fatma also advises that if you'd like more information, you can Google if you'd like to find out about this term that we're talking about, genuine democracy. Any questions you'd like to post on the chat? You can post even comments, I will read them out.
Easter's hand is up.
Easter, please go ahead.
I'm asking that whilst we speak, we keep on talking about the UN Resolution 1325 and the issues of atrocities at different levels, whether within the East Africa region or even within Kenya. What are we speaking about before the elections in the next few weeks on reparation and protection of women if there's any conflict? And have we done any scenarios, mapping of how we'll engage just in case we have a challenge within our civic spaces?
Easter, is your question directed at any of the panelists, or it's a question
any of us? It's to all of us. It's to all of us as something which we need to think about, because I'm finding that within our spaces, we are not doing real scenario mapping, and politics of the day always tell us we've caught off guard. And if we are doing scenario mapping, who is helping us do scenario mapping at what level? And then do we even have resources as political and women's movements to be able to respond in case we have a challenge? We need to locate resources. So I'm just asking a question to us. Are we really prepared to deal with the political scenarios? Or at our level still will be caught off guard? And if you're caught off guard, how difficult will it be this time? Because the level of violence which we see keeps on increasing, and rape is used as a tool of conflict in each of them. I'm just asking that question for women to respond. Yes.
Yes, scenario mapping, right? Looking at what situations you might encounter during elections, after elections, generally women in leadership, and preparing Just as I'm seeing a question being asked about protecting yourself online. How do you protect yourself online? You have to prepare for any type of scenario. And then how do you respond to that scenario? And just to answer Rhoda Melly, I think there are several CSOs that are conducting online training workshops. One of them is Amwek. I think Crew is doing so as well, and many others within and outside this space. And I think feel free to reach out to any of them. Even I can direct you to the ones that are conducting these online trainings, because there's so much. And it may not be possible for us to do it here, like show you exactly how to do it, but this is usually tackled during these training forums that are both online and offline. Purity, I can see your hand is up. Please go ahead and mute your mic and tell us if your question is to a particular panelist or whether it is just to all of us who are in this session.
Thank you so much for this wonderful session, Rachel. I don't have a particular question, but a comment. I'm looking at it when also we women, we align ourselves to specific political parties, we end up losing a lot when our opponents win. And I think the best scenario is how the business community usually engage in politics. They usually reach out to everyone, regardless whether you are going to win or not, but they're just safeguarding their interest. And I think also for us women, that is a culture that we can adopt to ensure that we are safeguarding our interest in all political parties. Thank you.
I like that. The business community actually, when it comes to solidarity, they actually do it, and you'd think that they're trained to do it, but it looks like it's part of the skills that they are conditioned, you know, that they have when it comes to supporting each other, irrespective of whether you win or lose. You all have the same goal. And I think it should apply to women as well, irrespective of the political party you're affiliated to, irrespective of whether you win, whether you do not win. It's a learning opportunity. Emily, your hand is also up. You have a question or a comment? Please unmute.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emily. And I just want us to ask ourselves, like Esther was saying, the male politicians start elections the day after the results have been released. But the women start like 6 months too. I feel like even CSOs, we behave the same, women's rights organizations, because I've been like literally every single thing that everybody is saying on this platform today is something I have been through about 3 election cycles as a women's rights organization member. And it is literally the same conversation every election cycle. So on 10th of August, we will go back into our cocoons, into our silos, and do whatever it is that we do. Then 2026, we will wake up again and start saying, okay, women are experiencing violence, women do not have money, women do not have this, the same discussion. So how can we consolidate the gains that we make now and make them sustainable throughout, even without an electioneering period? Like, we continue empowering women, we continue supporting women politicians, because you find after elections, I don't know who was saying that women just disappear. They disappear, they have no support, they have nothing. So how can we even as CSO sustain this conversation past 10th and onwards? I hope the question is clear.
Thank you, Emily. Your question is very clear. You're talking about sustainability. Sustainability before, during, after, continuity. I don't know whether you wanted a particular panelist to answer or just anyone from the panel.
All of us, anyone can answer it, if not even necessarily a panelist.
Yes. Allow me to call upon Honorable Esnas. Maybe you can take that up and then ask your question or give your comment. Mheshimiwa?
Thank you. I want to start by responding to Rhoda's question. How can you hide your location and what can you do? Go to your app play, then download Siphon. That Siphon will help you. If you are in Nairobi, you update your iPhone, your Siphon location, somebody will see you are in Amsterdam or you are in
Please spell
Kisii.
it for us, Mheshimiwa. Please spell it and then I'll type it on the chat.
I'll type it on the chat. Huh?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. So once you download it, there is a place it will ask you to maybe subscribe to some cash or what, but just with the normal one, it will always hide your location. Your normal location, that is the Google location now. From the normal location, that is the Kenyan one, the GPRS, but the Google location will always hiding, it will always give the wrong information from where you are, including now your gadgets. So somebody cannot track you through your gadget or through any phone that you're using, if you're using that Siphon. It will help you so much to be safe. Then number two, you also avoid, there's that tendency, like for us, I used to be one of the women who usually say, feeling happy in Mombasa Beach, feeling happy with 100 others. They will always track you through your friends. So just feel happy, but don't give us the location. Then lastly, on your security, always try to always get somebody. If your phone is hacked, the phone sends a message to your person. If there is a code you're sent, somebody also gets the same code. So they will always confirm from you and confirm from the other side if it is you who wants to enter that login or want to enter something on your laptop or something. So always have a supportive gadget somewhere that will help you to secure your net. And then there's this question Madam has asked there about how we can sustain after, now before election, after election, and up to maybe 2037, 2047, because still we are having people coming. The organizations, I want to talk to organizations that are doing women for empowerment forums or academies, that please, mostly we get the empowerment only a year to election. As I said earlier, it's better when these elections, when these empowerments, when these trainings start as early as after a general election. So we know who are we grooming. And this also is supposed to be now per county. Like in this county, we want to have 5 women vying in 5 different constituencies against 9 constituencies. So we have 5 women from Kisii who we are going to know where they are, what they are doing, how they are going to do it. If it is speech therapy, we start with them. If it's branding, from the word go. So after 4 years, these will be women who can even mentor other women. Let's not wait until the last minute. Secondly, for us who are already in the system, like for us who are already now in the hub, we are the people to not wait for the funds. Start small, but start smart. It will always pull somebody to come and see what you're doing. Because I'm looking at a situation where if we wait for money to come so as we can do programs, if we wait for money to come so as we can train and mentor, then it means we'll wait for this money forever. We'll wait for money for 3 years, and these women can be trained for the last 3 years. Let something find you moving. Let these programs, or let the money find you moving, doing something. So as at least whenever you're funded, you can also feel good that I did it, I started it, and they found me on the road moving, and they gave me the support that I needed. And these are the women that I've worked with. And these are the women that are now they're my team, they are my mentees. These are the people who can only talk because I trained them how to talk. So I think we don't need to wait until the last minute.
Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. my connection was a bit intermittent. I hope you can still hear me. I can see there are no other hands that are up, but I'll give a chance. Allow me to give a chance to Mercy Jelimo. She wants to add something to her presentation. Mercy? Is Mercy still here with us? If not, Easter, you can go ahead.
I've seen Mercy.
Hope you can hear me.
Oh, okay, sorry for that. I saw Mercy trying to speak. We can listen to Mercy and then Easter will give you about a minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mercy. Please go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to also respond to the question that Emily has raised. And I was a bit hesitant because then I didn't want to sound like a broken record, because that is actually what we've been talking about, you know, the late entrance to these political campaigns and political season, that we usually wait until it's actually 6 months to the elections. That's when we bring our support. So I think for us as the women's rights organization is to sit down together and find ways in which we can work and support women candidates beyond the funds that we receive from donors. So how can we work without donor funding? Because what makes us come late into the field is because we are dependent on donor. And sometimes this funding comes really late. And when it comes, it also comes with its prescription of what you can do and what you cannot do when it comes to political support. So we need to sit down together, and also we need to forge partnerships with other partners, non-traditional partners, the partners that we are not used to, and find ways in which they can also support women's participation in politics and in leadership. Back to the points that I wanted to make, I was also asked to talk about some of the programs and systems that we need to put in place to increase access to more policy-making spaces. And one is we need to increase investments, including financial resources to women and girl rights organizations. Secondly, we need to coordinate. And then when I say we, I mean women and girl rights organizations. We need to coordinate better and work across sectors and across movements for us to be as effective. Thirdly, we need also to prioritize programs that support women's political participation and programs that reinforce women's leadership. And we also need now to move from descriptive representation to substantive representation. And this is what Madam Esther Parsaris was talking about, that beyond having numbers of women, we need also now to be moving into what are these women that we put in policy making processes making for us. So those were my quick suggestions for systems that we needed. Thank you, and over to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Mercy, for illuminating the programs and systems that would help to increase access to these policies that we are talking about. Easter?
Just a quick one. We need to form partnerships because, for example, I can see one of our partners sitting here.
You have typed on the chat.
Hello?
If you'd like to speak,
hello?
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I hope.
Yes, Easter, we hear you.
All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm saying, one, partnerships with government for sustainable spaces. For us to engage for sustainable spaces, we must have partnerships with government. So initiating partnerships where spaces are given to us by government, which, for example, we are looking at this space in Kisumu County. One of our partners is here from the city of Kisumu, and also looking at the lakefront corporation, that those spaces ensures that sustainability is there. So when we're looking at that, both the state and non-state invest in those spaces where women can then engage. And then at a different level for me, we are saying that we must also invest in movement building, and it must be an intersectional movement building. We tend to invest in activities and not movement building. So if you're looking at intersectional and intergenerational feminist movement building, then we will have located where our challenges are, and we are then able to holistically have different people talking at different spaces, whether it's the labor movement, whether it's the political movement, whether it's the different movements, whether it's the women movement, youth, are all engaged for one common purpose, that the issues of, when you're talking about women in their different identities, must be fulfilled. So if we are not investing in women's movement, we'll still talk in the year 2063, when we are looking at what Africa talked about, and will not be able to respond to the people who have invested in us. So let us not wait until it is too late.
Another ball thrown to our court. Thank you, Easter. And thank you so much, everyone, for participating, asking questions, giving your comments, and challenging us to do more. There's so much more to be done. Allow me now to call upon Florence. Florence, are you still in the room?
Yes, I am.
Yes, please go ahead and give us your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Mine is to really thank all the speakers, all the moderator, yourself, and the rest of the team. Just to say, there are pertinent issues that have been raised today, and I'll just quickly run through those as we conclude. And just to pick it from Easter, the issues of collaboration and partnerships are very key. It's one thing for us to speak about it, but it's another thing for us to really have practical partnerships and collaborations that we can be proud of as the women rights movement, or the women, the sectors that are championing women's rights. And so I know there's a lot, like on the SDG Forum is hosting the Gender Knowledge Hub, other organizations like CREW, the Women Deliver team or conversation in Kenya, Deliver for Good, and many others. And so how do we all plug into the different collaborations that can propel issues of gender equality in Kenya? So I think that's one challenge, because I know most of us come from civil society. There are many platforms, many opportunities, not just only wanting for us, for people to plug into our own activities, but also ensuring that we could add value to other people's activities and movement building on different sectors. There are a lot of issues under gender equality. If you look at the SDG targets, SDG 5, the targets under SDG 5, there's a lot that we need to be focusing on. And I know today was about issues of women in politics. And so within that, for me, I want to pose this to the floor, that I agree with most of the questions posed and the speakers who said we need to have continuous conversations with women in politics. We don't, not only during election periods when people are looking for votes, but how can we continuously, especially when they are elected into power. And this is just to acknowledge Honorable Fatma and also Honorable Pasaris and Honorable Esna for the time they spent with us today, and also for the wisdom and just making time. We should not take such moments for granted. We should have continuous conversation, and so to them, we really want to continuously engage them and many other women who will be coming in, especially for the Kenyan political scene with the new election. So how do we have practical ways? How do we come together and ensure that we could have this continuous conversation? Maybe, as we all know, this cannot be done by one organization. If we say that maybe the forum or just one of the organizations maybe can do this continuously, sometimes because of the resourcing and many other issues that were raised by some of the speakers, it's not possible. So then how do we forge ways forward that can continuously ensure that we have conversations, we can deliberate on issues that we need raised in different sectors within government? How do we follow up on legislation? How do we follow up on social accountability? Because that's big, and that's one of our key roles as civil society organizations. And then the other point for me would be sustainability. How do we sustain not just these conversations, but how do we sustain our actions? Because a lot of the actions we're talking about, when I listen to Jane Anyango talking about the talking boxes, when I listen to Polycom and maybe Kefiado, the work that is happening in different organizations, how do we ensure that we can continue with this momentum? We can ensure that the interventions are sustainable beyond just projects. And so I think this is just a bigger takeaway for all of us as a team. And also the issues of capacity building and mentorship. There's a need for us to continuously build each other's capacity, because we all come from different fields. Some of us are more into legislation and understand the 2/3 gender issues or bill and more than others, while others are good in terms of social mobilization or ensuring that there's access to basic needs. How do we come together and ensure that this can happen? And lastly, of course, we are talking about challenges being faced by women and girls in Kenya and also in Africa. How do we as a team continue this conversation? How can our programming ensure that we focus the issues of sustainable development moving, across board? And so there's great opportunities for me listening in and just hearing the wealth of knowledge that is coming from the speakers showcases that it's time for us to really forge a way forward as a team, and also to ensure that we can bring others who are out here, who are not maybe actively involved in our different engagements or collaborations. There's space for us to continuously partner with one another. So at this point, I just want to say thank you to the moderator. Thank you, Ms. Rachel. You've done a good job, and we appreciate your time and also ensuring that the conversation was well balanced and also very, very rich. To the speakers, to the honorables, as I said before, thank you for making time. We know your schedules are not easy or very tight, and you made time to be with us, and also for your rich input. And we have taken away so much and will want to engage you in future as a team. And also to the participants, thank you for staying with us until this hour. We hope that you've been challenged, and also going away will be able to plan better, but also will be able to contribute positively to gender equality in this country. And to the SDG Forum team led by Ellen, thank you, Medica, our communications lead, and Festus, and Winnie, thank you very much for your support and all the work that has been done today. So mine is just to say asanteni, and let's keep the conversations. And so maybe Helen, in case you have a last word, thank you.
Helen? Helen, you can hear us?
I don't think she's, maybe she's dropped.
Okay, fine.
I'm here. My internet was just, sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you, Florence, and thank you, Rachel. Thank you for everyone who has been able to participate. Thank you, Mildred, for standing with us even while you're sick. We wish you a quick recovery, and all those who are not feeling well, please, we wish you a quick recovery. Thank you, everyone. And just to say, the conversations have just begun. We will continue engaging online. We will also be sharing our joint statement by end of day, so that we can continue to engage with HLPF and other processes. Asanteni sana, kwaheri.
Thank you, bye.